The silence before the truth, the night began like any other, quiet and unassuming, as if the universe had decided to hold its breath. Keanu Reeves sat by the large window of his hotel room, watching the soft rain blur the lights of Los Angeles. He had just finished another long day of filming, surrounded by people, cameras, and noise. Yet, when the doors closed and the silence returned, it felt as though he was the only person left in the world. He took a slow breath, his eyes distant, his thoughts wandering somewhere far beyond the city below. That same evening, miles away, Sandra Bullock sat alone in her living room, holding a cup of untouched tea. The warmth had faded, but she didn't care. Her mind replayed old memories, laughter on film sets, late-night rehearsals, quiet talks between takes. And in the center of all of it was Keanu. She had known him for years, shared scenes, jokes, and countless smiles. But there was one thing she had never shared, one truth she had buried deep under professionalism and fear. Tonight, something inside her refused to stay quiet any longer. Earlier that day, a message had arrived on her phone. It was from Keanu. He had written, "Hey, are you free tonight? I'd love to talk." It was simple, gentle, like him. Yet those few words made her heart race. It wasn't unusual for him to reach out. They often checked on each other. But tonight, the message carried a weight she couldn't explain. Something about it felt different, final, as if it might lead to a moment they had both unknowingly avoided for years. As the rain continued, Keanu prepared tea for two. It was something he always did when he expected someone he cared about. It wasn't about the drink itself, but the gesture, the quiet kindness of sharing warmth. He checked the time twice, then 3 times, wondering if she would really come. Sandra had texted back half an hour ago, saying only, "I'll be there soon." Those 4 words lingered in his chest like a promise. When the knock finally came, it was soft, barely a sound. He opened the door, and there she was, wearing a simple gray coat, her hair slightly wet from the rain. She smiled faintly, but her eyes were uncertain, almost trembling. He stepped aside, motioning her in. The room glowed with warm yellow light, and the scent of jasmine tea filled the air. For a few moments, they didn't speak. They just stood there, watching each other with quiet understanding that words could never replace. "You look tired," she finally said, placing her coat on the chair. "Long day," he replied, "but better now that you're here." It was the kind of exchange they'd had hundreds of times, yet tonight it carried a deeper meaning. Something unspoken moved between them, a mix of nostalgia and longing that neither could fully hide anymore. She sat by the window where the rain shimmered against the glass, and he joined her, bringing 2 cups of tea. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they had never said. As minutes passed, Sandra tried to speak, but stopped herself each time. She could feel her heart pounding louder than the rain outside. Keanu noticed and gently asked, "Something on your mind?" His tone was calm, sincere, patient, the kind of patience that made people feel safe. She nodded, then shook her head, unsure where to begin. He didn't press her. He just waited, his gaze steady, his presence grounding her like quiet gravity. Finally, she took a deep breath and whispered, "Do you ever feel like some moments never really end? Like they follow you, no matter how much time passes?" He looked at her, thinking for a second before answering softly, "Yeah, I think some moments are meant to stay with us. Maybe they're reminders of what we almost said, or what we never had the courage to." His words hit her harder than she expected. Her eyes glistened as she stared at the rain. She remembered the first time they met, young, unsure, standing under bright studio lights. He had been gentle even then, offering a quiet smile when she stumbled over a line. Over the years, their connection had deepened in ways that felt both innocent and profound. Yet neither of them had ever stepped beyond the line that separated friendship from something more. "You always knew how to say the right thing," she said with a soft laugh that trembled halfway through. "Not really," he smiled. "I just try to listen." That simple line broke something inside her, not in pain, but in recognition. He wasn't pretending to understand her. He truly did, and that realization scared her more than anything. She wanted to tell him everything, about the nights she thought of him, about the times she almost called, about how much his kindness had meant when the world felt cruel. But her voice refused to move. Keanu watched her silently, sensing the storm within her. His expression softened. "You don't have to say anything tonight if you don't want to," he said gently. Sometimes silence says enough, but she shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I've been silent too long." Her eyes met his, and he saw something there. A depth, a vulnerability he hadn't seen before. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the cup, and her voice lowered to a fragile tone. "There's something I never told you. Something I should have said years ago." The room grew still. The rain outside softened as if the world itself was listening. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his eyes searching hers. "What is it, Sandra?" She hesitated. Her throat felt tight. Her mind caught between fear and relief. She opened her mouth to speak, but at that moment a flash of lightning lit the sky, followed by a low roll of thunder. It startled her, and she closed her eyes for a second, steadying her breath. When she opened them again, tears were glistening on her lashes. "You changed my life, Keanu," she said quietly. "In ways I never told you. In ways you'll never fully know." He didn't move, didn't interrupt. His gaze stayed fixed on her, filled with patience and warmth. She continued, her words trembling but sincere. "When my father died, you were the only person who noticed I wasn't okay. Everyone else saw the actress smiling on camera, but you saw the person behind it. You stayed late on set just to make sure I ate. You sent messages just to ask if I slept. You didn't have to do any of that. But you did, and I never forgot." Keanu looked down for a moment, swallowing hard. "You never had to thank me for that," he murmured. "But I do," she said, "because no one else ever cared like that." "Not really." The air between them grew heavy with unspoken emotion. For the first time, he looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. "I cared," he said softly, "because you mattered to me." Their eyes locked again, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and the city lights blurred into soft golden streaks. Sandra felt tears roll down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. She leaned slightly closer, her voice almost a whisper. "I know," she said. "That's what makes it harder." Keanu frowned gently, confused but quiet. "Harder for what?" She took a trembling breath, her lips parting as if the truth she had carried for years was finally pushing its way out. "For me to pretend I don't feel what I feel." The words hung in the air like a fragile secret. He blinked, his heart pounding once, twice, before settling into a deep, uncertain silence. Outside, another soft rumble of thunder rolled across the sky, echoing the storm that now lived between them. She lowered her gaze, afraid to see his reaction. Her hands tightened around the teacup as she whispered, "I didn't come here tonight to confuse you, Keanu. I came because I can't keep pretending anymore." He exhaled slowly, trying to steady his thoughts. His voice, when it came, was calm but deep with emotion. "Sandra, what are you trying to tell me?" Her eyes lifted again, shining with a mix of fear and relief. She leaned closer across the small space that separated them, her heart beat loud in her ears. The truth was seconds away, a truth she had buried beneath years of silence, work, and friendship. But before she could speak, her phone vibrated on the table. She froze. The screen flashed with a name she didn't expect, one that made her expression change instantly. Keanu saw it too. It was someone from her past, someone whose sudden reappearance would change everything about this night. She reached for the phone with shaking hands, staring at the message that had just appeared. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Keanu watched her carefully, sensing something shift. "What is it?" he asked quietly. Sandra looked up, tears gathering in her eyes. It's something I thought I left behind," she said. The phone buzzed again, and she turned it face down on the table, as if trying to stop the past from interrupting the present. But both of them knew the peace of the moment was gone. The silence returned, heavier, sharper, full of questions neither of them were ready to ask. And as the rain began again outside, Keanu leaned forward just slightly, his voice quiet but firm. "Whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone." Her eyes glistened, her lips trembling as she whispered, "You don't understand, Keanu. If I tell you the truth, everything between us might change." The wind howled outside, and the lights flickered once. She took a breath, and then, just before she could speak again, the room went dark. The darkness that spoke louder than words. The room fell into sudden darkness, leaving only the faint outline of rain-soaked city lights flickering through the window. Sandra froze. Her breath caught in her throat while Keanu reached instinctively for the small flashlight on the table. The silence was sharp, broken only by the rain tapping against the glass and the faint hum of distant thunder. For a moment, it felt as if time itself had stopped, holding its breath between one truth and another. Keanu switched on the flashlight, its beam cutting through the room in a soft golden hue. It illuminated Sandra's face, pale and tense, her eyes filled with something that looked like fear, but also guilt. He noticed the way her hand rested near the phone, the way she seemed torn between hiding it and picking it up again. "Power's out," he said gently, trying to calm the moment. "Probably the storm." She nodded, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Yeah, probably." But deep down, she knew it wasn't the blackout that made her heart race. It was that message, the one she hadn't dared to open again. Keanu watched her silently, sensing the shift in her energy. He had known Sandra for years, long enough to recognize when something was truly wrong. This wasn't about an ex or a random text. It was something deeper, something that frightened her. "Sandra," he said softly, "whatever that message was. You looked like you saw a ghost." She tried to smile, but it came out broken. "Maybe I did," she murmured. "Maybe part of my past just came back to remind me it never really left." Keanu moved closer, setting the flashlight on the table so the warm circle of light fell between them. His eyes met hers, calm and steady, a silent promise that she could say anything. "You can tell me," he said. "You don't have to keep carrying it alone." She looked away, her voice barely audible. "You always say that I don't have to carry it alone. But what if the truth hurts the person who's trying to help?" He paused, his expression softening. "Then I'd still rather know than watch you hide in pain." For a long moment, she didn't answer. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the phone and stared at the screen. The message was still there, a short one, but enough to make her stomach twist. It said, "We need to talk. It's about what happened in Vancouver." Keanu saw the message over her shoulder. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Vancouver?" he asked quietly. She nodded. 5 years ago," she said. "During that film, I never finished." He remembered it well. She had suddenly dropped out of that project halfway through, citing exhaustion and personal reasons. At the time, everyone had believed it. No one had questioned it. But now, sitting in that dim light, it was clear there had been more to the story. "What happened there?" he asked softly. She hesitated, clutching the phone tighter. "Something that changed me," she whispered. "Something I've been trying to forget." Before she could continue, the lights flickered back to life, flooding the room in warm yellow again. The sudden brightness almost felt intrusive, like it was exposing secrets that preferred the dark. Sandra blinked, adjusting her eyes, and quickly turned the phone face down again. Keanu didn't move. He just watched her quietly. "You can trust me," he said again, his tone deeper now, almost pleading. "Whatever happened, it doesn't change what I think of you." Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't know that," she said. "You don't know what I did." He leaned closer, his voice steady. "Then tell me. Let me know." She took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly. "It was a mistake," she began. "A moment I thought would save someone, but it ended up hurting more people than I could imagine. I trusted someone I shouldn't have. And when it all fell apart, I ran. I left without explaining anything. I told everyone it was exhaustion, but the truth is, I was terrified." Keanu's voice softened. "Terrified of what?" She looked into his eyes, her voice cracking. "Of losing everything I built, and of losing myself." Her confession hung in the air like smoke, fragile and thick. Keanu's face didn't change. No judgment, no shock, only quiet empathy. "We all make choices we regret," he said gently. "The difference is that you care enough to regret them." But Sandra shook her head. "It's not that simple. Someone got hurt because of what I did. Someone who didn't deserve it." The moment stretched into silence again, filled with invisible weight. Keanu reached out, resting his hand near hers but not touching. It was a silent gesture. Not intrusion, just presence. "You've spent years punishing yourself for something you can't change," he said quietly. "But maybe tonight is the night you stop running from it." She met his gaze again, tears slipping down her cheeks. "And what if telling you changes the way you see me?" "Then I'll see you more clearly," he replied. "And I'll still be here." Those words broke her completely. Her shoulders trembled as a soft sob escaped her lips. Keanu moved closer, not saying anything, just letting her cry. He handed her a napkin, his expression gentle and still. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I wasn't supposed to be in that car," she said. "Someone else was, a friend, a man I trusted. I thought I could protect him from a scandal that was about to destroy his life. But the night I switched places with him, there was an accident. And the person in the other car didn't make it." Keanu's breath caught. His eyes softened even more. "Oh, Sandra, it wasn't my fault," she continued, shaking her head. "But it was my decision that led to it. And I've lived with that guilt every single day since." The room fell silent. Outside, the rain began again, lighter this time, almost like a whisper. Keanu took a slow breath and finally said, "You didn't mean for it to happen. You tried to protect someone. That doesn't make you bad. It makes you human." She looked at him, eyes red from tears. "But it destroyed a part of me, Keanu. I stopped believing I deserved happiness after that. I stopped believing I deserved someone like you." The confession hit him hard. His heart ached, not from shock, but from the deep sadness in her words. "You do deserve it," he said softly. "You always have." She tried to smile, but it trembled. "You say that now," she whispered, "but you don't know the full story." Before he could respond, another knock echoed from the door. Both of them froze. Keanu stood slowly, glancing toward the entrance. "Are you expecting someone?" Sandra's expression changed instantly. Fear flashed across her face. "No," she said quickly. "I didn't tell anyone I was coming here." The knock came again, louder this time. 3 sharp taps that seemed too deliberate to be coincidence. Keanu walked toward the door cautiously, glancing back at her once. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'll check." He opened it slowly. A man stood outside, soaked from the rain, his face partially hidden under a hood. His voice was calm but cold when he spoke. "Sorry to interrupt, but I think she owes me a conversation." Keanu turned slightly, his jaw tightening. "Who are you?" The man lifted his head, revealing eyes that carried a strange familiarity, the kind that hinted at old wounds. "My name doesn't matter," he said. "But she knows who I am." Keanu looked back at Sandra. Her face had gone pale. Her lips parted slightly as if her breath had been stolen away. She whispered one word, just one name, and Keanu immediately knew. This was the man from Vancouver. The man from Vancouver. The sound of rain filled the silence after that name left Sandra's lips. Keanu stood motionless at the door, his hand still on the handle as if time had frozen between them. The man in the hallway didn't move either. His gaze shifted from Sandra to Keanu, cold but tired, like someone carrying years of anger and regret. The air felt heavy, too thick to breathe. Keanu finally spoke, his tone steady but guarded. "You should come in. Standing there in the rain won't help anyone." The man stepped inside slowly, his wet boots leaving dark marks on the floor. The faint scent of rain and asphalt followed him as he pulled down his hood. His face was sharp, lined by years of stress, and his eyes, deep, brown, and haunted, landed directly on Sandra. She hadn't moved since he appeared. Her expression was pale and unreadable, but her trembling hands betrayed the storm inside her. "You didn't expect to see me again, did you?" the man said quietly. Sandra swallowed hard, her voice small. "I thought you were gone." He gave a bitter laugh. "Oh, I was. For a while. But ghosts don't stay buried forever." Keanu watched the exchange carefully, trying to understand. "Maybe someone should explain what's going on," he said softly. The man turned toward him, studying his calm expression. "You're Keanu Reeves," he said in a tone that was almost mocking but not cruel. "You probably have no idea who I am. My name is Liam." I worked with Sandra years ago, before everything went wrong. Keanu nodded politely. Liam. All right. Maybe you can tell me what you're doing here. Liam sighed, glancing at Sandra. I came because she never gave me closure. Because she left without telling anyone the truth. And because I've spent years trying to clean up a mess that wasn't entirely mine. Sandra's eyes glistened with guilt. Don't, she whispered. Not here. Not like this. Why not? Liam snapped, his voice rising for the first time. You had your chance to speak. 5 years of silence, Sandra. Do you know what that did to me? Keanu stepped forward slightly, placing himself between them. You need to calm down, he said firmly. She doesn't owe you an argument tonight, Liam glared at him. And you don't even know what you're defending. Sandra took a shaky breath and finally spoke, her voice trembling. He's right, Keanu. You don't know everything. I told you part of it earlier, about the accident. But I didn't tell you who was in the other car. Liam's jaw tightened. Go ahead, he said bitterly. Tell him, she hesitated. It was his wife, she whispered. The words hit Keanu like a silent wave. He turned to Liam, eyes widening in shock. Liam's expression was unreadable, but his voice was steady. My wife didn't survive that crash. And for 5 years, I lived with the story that it was my fault. Because I was supposed to be the one driving that night. But she switched with me. She thought she was protecting me from a scandal, and she never told anyone why. Keanu's heart sank. He looked at Sandra, who was now crying quietly. You tried to save him, he said softly. But it cost his wife her life. She nodded slowly. I thought I was doing the right thing, she said. I thought I could protect him. I didn't know it would end like that. Liam looked at her with a mix of pain and understanding. You think I blamed you all these years, he said. But I didn't, not completely. I blamed myself. I should have told the truth back then. I should have taken responsibility. But instead, I let you carry it alone. Keanu listened, his chest tightening. The air between the three of them felt charged, full of guilt, grief, and things too heavy to name. Sandra wiped her tears, her voice soft. Why now, Liam? Why come after all this time? Liam's voice broke slightly. Because last month my daughter found the police report. She's old enough to ask questions now, and I didn't want her to grow up believing her mother's death was just an accident. I needed to face the truth before she did. The room went silent again. Sandra's lips trembled. Does she know about me? Not yet, Liam said. But she will. And before that happens, I needed to know if you've forgiven yourself, or if you're still hiding behind the same silence. Sandra looked down, her voice breaking. I'm not hiding anymore, she whispered. That's why I came here tonight. I was finally ready to tell the truth. Keanu felt something stir in his chest. Admiration, sadness, and a strange sense of pride. She wasn't running anymore. She was standing in the middle of her own storm, facing the ghosts that had haunted her for years. Liam sighed and rubbed his temples. Maybe that's all I needed to hear, he said quietly. I don't hate you, Sandra. I just needed to see that you were still human, not the perfect Hollywood image the world worships. She nodded weakly, tears glistening on her cheeks. I'm far from perfect, she said. I've made more mistakes than people will ever know. Liam's expression softened. We all have, he said. But I think it's time to let her rest. Both of us. He turned toward the door, ready to leave. Keanu followed him to the hallway. Before stepping out, Liam paused and said quietly, She's lucky to have someone like you. Don't let her hide anymore. Then he was gone. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Keanu and Sandra in silence again. The rain had eased into a gentle drizzle, and the world outside seemed calmer, almost forgiving. Sandra sat back down, her face pale and tired. Keanu joined her quietly. Neither of them spoke for a while. The only sound was the faint rhythm of rain against the glass. Finally, Keanu said softly, You did what you thought was right. It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it human. She looked at him, her eyes full of exhaustion. I don't know how to live without guilt anymore. Then don't, he said gently. Just live with it, but live anyway. Let it remind you that you care, not that you failed. She smiled faintly, the first real smile in hours. You make it sound simple. "It's not," he said, smiling back. "But maybe it's a start." She took a deep breath, feeling a strange peace settling over her. The truth had finally been spoken. The ghosts were still there, but they no longer had power over her. But just as she began to relax, her phone buzzed again. Keanu glanced at it, and so did she. Her eyes widened. This time, the message wasn't from Liam. It was from an unknown number. The message read, "You think the truth is out, but it's not over. Meet me tomorrow night. Same hotel, same time. Come alone." Her hand shook as she read it again. Keanu leaned forward, his calm expression hardening slightly. "Who sent that?" he asked. She didn't answer. She just looked at him, fear creeping back into her eyes. And outside, the rain began to fall harder once more, as if the night itself knew. The truth had only just begun to unravel. The meeting in the shadows the next morning came quietly, as if the city was holding its breath again. Los Angeles looked washed clean by the night's storm, but inside Keanu's apartment, the air still carried the weight of everything that had been said and everything that hadn't. Sandra sat by the window, watching the light spread slowly across the buildings. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, that new message flashed before her again. "You think the truth is out, but it's not over." Keanu entered the room with 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to her, his expression calm but focused. "You didn't sleep," he said softly. She shook her head. "I couldn't. I kept thinking about that message." He nodded, taking a seat across from her. "Did you get any idea who might have sent it?" "No," she said quietly. "It came from an unknown number. It could be anyone. Maybe a journalist. Maybe someone from the production crew in Vancouver. Or maybe—" She hesitated, her voice trembling. "Maybe someone who was there that night." Keanu leaned forward, his voice steady but serious. "If this person wants to meet you, it's not safe to go alone." She looked at him, torn. The message said to come alone. "Maybe if I don't, they won't show." "And maybe that's exactly what they want you to think," he said. "Whoever it is, they know how to get under your skin. They're using guilt to control you." She sighed, her hands tightening around the coffee mug. "You're probably right. But if I don't go, I'll never know the full truth." He studied her for a long moment, the kind of look that came from deep care. Not control, not fear, but quiet understanding. "If you're going," he said finally, "then I'm going too. Not to interfere, just to make sure you come back safe." She shook her head weakly. "They said come alone." He smiled faintly. "Then I'll make sure you're alone, but not unprotected." That day passed slowly, every hour dragging with quiet tension. Sandra tried to go about normal things, checking emails, answering calls, but her mind stayed locked on the message. The address in it led to a small hotel near the outskirts of the city, far from the noise and glamour of Hollywood. It wasn't the kind of place where anyone would expect to see her. That, she realized, was the point. As night fell again, she dressed simply. A black coat, no makeup, hair tied back. She looked at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. This wasn't the confident actress the world knew. This was someone stripped of roles and cameras, standing at the edge of something raw and real. Keanu appeared behind her reflection. "You ready?" he asked quietly. "As ready as I'll ever be," she whispered. He handed her a small earpiece. "Just so I can hear what's going on. I'll stay outside near the car. If anything feels wrong, say the word echo. That's it. I'll come in." She nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you," she said softly. "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "You've done enough walking through storms alone." They left the apartment together, the city lights glowing like distant stars. As they reached the hotel, Sandra felt her heart hammering harder with each step. Keanu parked 2 blocks away, blending the car into the shadows. She took one last breath and walked toward the entrance. The lobby was almost empty. A tired clerk glanced up but said nothing. She moved to the elevator, pressing the button for the 4th floor, the same number mentioned in the message. The doors closed with a soft metallic click, and her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored walls. She felt small, almost ghost-like, as the elevator rose. On the 4th floor, the hallway was dimly lit, quiet except for the hum of air vents. Room 417, that was the number. She walked slowly toward it, every sound amplified in her ears. Her fingers trembled as she knocked once. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Then, just as she was about to turn away, a voice came from inside, calm, low, almost emotionless. "It's open." She pushed the door gently. It creaked as it swung inward. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of a desk lamp. A man sat near the window, his back turned. "You came," he said without turning around. Her voice was tense. "Who are you?" He turned slowly. Her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't Liam, it was someone else. Someone she hadn't seen in years. "My name is Martin," he said, standing up. "I was the investigator assigned to your case in Vancouver." She stared at him, disbelief washing over her. "You disappeared," she said. "You left before the case was closed." He nodded slowly. "Because I was told to. Someone higher up didn't want the truth to come out. They wanted the report buried, and they paid me to vanish." Her pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" "Who paid you?" He walked closer, his face half lit by the lamp. "You think you switched cars to protect Liam? You think that was your decision? It wasn't." Her body went rigid. "What do you mean?" He sighed, picking up an old folder from the table and sliding it toward her. "That night was staged, Sandra. Someone needed that crash to happen. You were meant to take that car, but not because of Liam, because of who else was in the other vehicle." She frowned, confused. "His wife—" "No," he interrupted sharply. "His wife wasn't supposed to be there. The passenger who was originally meant to be in that car never showed up. That's why everything went wrong." Her knees felt weak. She sank into the nearest chair, her hands trembling. "Who was the passenger?" Martin looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Someone from your own management team. Someone who had access to every detail of your schedule. Someone who knew you'd switch cars that night." She felt the blood drain from her face. "No," she whispered. "You're saying it was planned? That I was set up?" He nodded. "Someone wanted your career destroyed without getting their hands dirty. The crash wasn't supposed to kill anyone. It was supposed to ruin your image, make you disappear from Hollywood for good. But when the wrong person got in that car, everything spiraled out of control." Her voice cracked. "Who?" He hesitated, then whispered the name. "David Russell." The moment he said it, everything inside her froze. David, her former agent. The man who had guided her through half her career, who had vanished from her life right after the accident. She felt dizzy. "Why?" "Because you were about to end your contract and expose him for laundering money through fake charity events," Martin said. "He found out. He made sure that night would silence you. And when it didn't, he paid to have the investigation buried." Her body shook, tears streaming silently down her face. "You're lying," she said weakly. "You have no proof." Martin opened the folder and slid a photo across the table. A photo of David standing with the head of the insurance firm that had covered the crash. Documents underneath showed payments, signatures, dates. Every piece of it matched. Sandra stared at the evidence, her breathing uneven. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because I'm dying," he said quietly. "I don't have long left, and I can't keep this buried anymore. I need you to know the truth before I go." She covered her mouth, trying not to cry. "You could have told me years ago," she whispered. "I was scared," he admitted. "They warned me. They said if I spoke, I'd end up like your friend's wife." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stood abruptly, the room spinning around her. I can't do this," she said, backing toward the door. "You can't run anymore, Sandra," he said firmly. "If you don't confront David now, he'll keep controlling the story. The world still believes it was your fault. Only you can change that." She stopped at the door, her hand shaking on the handle. For a moment, she wanted to scream, cry, and disappear all at once. Then she whispered, "I'm not that woman anymore." And she walked out. In the parking lot below, Keanu stepped out of the shadows as she approached. Her face was pale, her eyes red. He knew instantly that something inside her had broken, but also that something else had been set free. He took her by the shoulders gently. "What happened?" She looked up at him, her voice trembling. "It wasn't an accident, Keanu. Someone wanted me gone." His expression darkened, his voice steady. "Then we find out who." Behind them, In the darkness of the hotel window, Martin watched them leave. His hand trembled as he picked up his phone and typed one final message. She knows. Prepare for her. He sent it, and somewhere across the city, a man in a glass office read it and smiled. The weight of betrayal the next morning. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, as if the city itself sensed what was coming. Sandra hadn't slept again. She sat by Keanu's kitchen table, a cup of cold coffee untouched before her. Her mind replayed Martin's words over and over. It wasn't an accident. Someone wanted you gone. Every time she thought of it, her stomach tightened. Keanu stood near the window, phone in hand, scrolling through old news archives and records. His calm face hid the storm building inside. He said David Russell, right? He asked quietly. Yes, Sandra replied, her voice hoarse. He was my agent for 10 years. I trusted him with everything. My contracts, my charity funds, even my personal schedule. She shook her head slowly. And all this time, he was planning to destroy me. Keanu turned toward her. We need to be smart about this. If he really has power to cover up an accident, he still has influence. We can't just walk in and accuse him. Then what do we do? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. We find proof, he said. Something solid. Something he can't bury or twist. She looked at him, her eyes tired but grateful. You don't have to do this with me, Keanu. He smiled faintly. Maybe not, but I want to. They spent the next few hours gathering what little they could. Old emails, charity records, flight bookings from the week of the crash. Sandra had kept everything hidden on an old drive, too painful to open for years. Now, as she scrolled through the files, the pieces began to fit together. A message from David, sent 2 days before the accident, caught Keanu's attention. It read, make sure the replacement car is ready. The original plan stands. Replacement car, Keanu repeated. That's not something people say casually, Sandra nodded slowly. That was the night Liam's wife offered to drive instead. I switched cars without thinking much of it. I thought I was protecting someone, but maybe that's what he wanted me to do. Keanu leaned back, deep in thought. Martin said the crash was meant to ruin you, not kill anyone. If that's true, someone else being in that car was the mistake, not the setup. But it still killed her, Sandra whispered. An innocent woman died because of their plan. Keanu's jaw tightened. Then they owe her the truth. They decided to confront David Russell directly, but quietly. Sandra called his office, pretending she wanted to meet about a potential new project. His assistant, sounding nervous, confirmed he'd be at his private suite that evening. Same hotel? Keanu asked. She nodded. Different floor. I guess he likes keeping secrets in the same places. Keanu smiled slightly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then we'll give him a truth he can't hide. That evening, the air felt heavier than usual. Keanu parked near the hotel again, but this time his presence wasn't hidden. He walked beside Sandra, his tall figure calm, silent, protective. She glanced at him as they entered the elevator. If anything happens, she whispered, you walk away. You've done enough. He looked at her and shook his head. I don't walk away from people I care about. Her eyes softened. She wanted to say something more, but the elevator doors opened. They stepped into the top-floor hallway where everything felt strangely still. Soft music played faintly from behind one of the doors. Suite 902. Sandra knocked gently. After a moment, the door opened, and there he was. David Russell, perfectly dressed, smiling as if the years hadn't touched him. Sandra, he said warmly, this is a surprise. And Keanu Reeves, right? I've seen your interviews. It's good to finally meet. Keanu didn't shake his hand. He just nodded politely. Sandra stepped inside, her expression calm but guarded. You look well, David said, pouring himself a drink. It's been years. I heard you stepped away from films for a while. Good for you. Peace of mind is rare in this business. You mean after the crash you arranged? Sandra said quietly. His hand froze for just a second before he laughed lightly. Crash? That's a strange thing to bring up after all this time. Don't play with me, she said, her voice trembling. Martin came to me. He told me everything. For the first time, his smile faded. He set the glass down carefully. Martin shouldn't have done that, he said softly. He was supposed to stay gone. So you admit it? Keanu said, stepping closer. You paid him off. David sighed, walking toward the window. Let's not turn this into a scene, Mr. Reeves. The truth is, Hollywood doesn't survive on honesty. It survives on illusion. Sometimes you protect the illusion, even if it means sacrificing a little truth. Sandra's hands curled into fists. You tried to destroy me because I was ending my contract? He turned to face her, his expression cold now. No, Sandra, because you were threatening something much bigger. Those charity accounts you wanted to audit? They weren't just mine. There were people behind me. Powerful ones. People you don't cross unless you're ready to disappear. Keanu's voice deepened. So you tried to make her vanish? David smirked slightly. Not vanish, just fade. I arranged a scandal, something small, something to damage her image. The accident was never supposed to happen, but when it did, I had to make sure no one found out who was really responsible. I cleaned it up. Everyone went home believing it was fate. Sandra's voice cracked. You took a life? He shrugged. So did fate. I just managed the story. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Keanu stepped forward. You're going to confess, he said quietly. You'll give her the files, the payments, everything. We'll take it to the police. David laughed softly. You think it's that simple? I've buried this for years. No one will believe you. And if you try, you'll regret it. Try us, Keanu said firmly. Sandra reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a small recorder. You should choose your words carefully, David, because this is still running. His eyes flicked toward the device. His smile faded completely. Clever, he said quietly. Keanu stepped closer, his tone sharp. We're done here, and if you try to silence her again, I'll make sure the whole world knows who you really are. David watched them walk toward the door, but his expression wasn't anger. It was something colder. You think this ends with a recording? He said softly. You don't understand how deep this goes. The people behind me, they won't let this stay buried. Sandra turned to face him one last time. Then let them come, she said. I'm done living afraid. They left the room. In the elevator, Sandra finally exhaled, her hands trembling. Keanu pressed the button for the lobby, his face calm but tense. You did it, he said quietly. You faced him. I don't feel free yet, she said. Something about his tone, it felt like a warning. He nodded slowly. We'll stay cautious. For now, let's get that recording to the right people. As they stepped out into the parking lot, the cool night air hit their faces. For the first time, Sandra smiled faintly, a fragile kind of relief. But that peace didn't last. From a distance, inside a black sedan parked across the street, two men sat watching them. One spoke softly into a phone. They have the recording, he said. What should we do? A calm voice replied from the other end. Let them think they're safe. We'll take care of it before the morning. The call ended. The sedan's headlights turned on, and as Keanu and Sandra drove away, neither of them noticed the car that followed quietly through the rain-soaked streets, headlights dim, waiting for the right moment. The night truth finally spoke. The rain returned before dawn, steady and relentless. It painted the city silver as it fell over rooftops, glass towers, and narrow streets. Keanu and Sandra drove through the quiet roads toward a journalist's office in West Hollywood. Someone Keanu trusted, someone who could take the recording and protect it. The city was asleep, but Sandra couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. She glanced through the rearview mirror again. A dark car had been behind them for the last 10 minutes. Its headlights kept a steady distance, not too close, not too far. Keanu noticed too. His jaw tightened slightly. Don't look back, he said softly. Just keep driving. Her voice was low. You see it too? Yeah. They've been following since the hotel. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. What do they want now? The recording? Probably, he said calmly. But we're not giving them that chance. He reached into his coat and pulled out his phone, dialing quickly. Matt, it's me, he said into the receiver. Wake up. I need you to meet us at the old warehouse near Sunset Pier. Now. And bring backup. This isn't for the press yet. Matt was the journalist, an old friend of Keanu's from years ago, a man who believed in truth more than power. When Keanu ended the call, he turned to Sandra. We'll take a detour. They'll expect us to head toward downtown. Sunset Pier is quieter, safer. She nodded, her pulse racing. Every streetlight seemed to flicker as they passed beneath it. The rain grew heavier, and the city blurred behind the windshield. The car behind them turned each time they did. Its presence was a shadow that refused to fade. Keanu, she whispered. If anything happens, he interrupted gently. Nothing's happening to you. Not tonight. They reached the long stretch of road leading to the pier, an abandoned area where warehouses stood silent and broken from years of disuse. The rain hit harder now, echoing against the empty metal doors. Sandra parked near one of the buildings, her heart pounding. The dark car slowed behind them, then stopped at a distance. Its engine stayed on. The headlights glowed faintly through the rain. Keanu stepped out first. Stay inside, he said firmly. Lock the doors. She nodded, but the fear in her eyes was clear. Be careful. He gave a faint smile. Always. He walked into the rain, calm and steady, his black coat soaked instantly. The other car door opened. Two men stepped out, tall, dressed in dark suits. One of them called out over the sound of rain. Mr. Reeves, we're not here for you. Just hand over the recording and this ends quietly. Keanu's voice was quiet but strong. You know I can't do that. The second man stepped closer. Don't make this difficult. She's done enough damage already. You don't want to be part of this. Keanu didn't move. If you really believe that, he said, then you've already picked the wrong side. Before the men could respond, a car engine roared in the distance. Headlights cut through the rain. Matt's Jeep rolled up fast, stopping beside Sandra's car. Two people jumped out, one holding a camera, the other a recorder. Is this the meeting? Matt shouted. The two men froze. One cursed under his breath. Damn it, he muttered, turning to his partner. We need to go. They got back in their car quickly, tires screeching as they reversed and disappeared into the foggy streets. Sandra stepped out, relief washing through her body. Keanu exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders. You always had perfect timing, he told Matt with a small smile. You said it was urgent, Matt replied. You weren't kidding. Inside the warehouse, the group sat on rusted chairs as the rain hammered the roof above them. Sandra handed the recorder to Matt. This has everything, she said quietly. His confession, the names, the payments. Matt nodded. I'll make copies and send them to 3 outlets before sunrise. Once it's public, they can't touch you anymore. She looked at him, eyes full of gratitude. Thank you. I don't care about the career anymore. I just want the truth to live somewhere beyond me. Keanu looked at her, his expression soft. You did it, Sandra. You didn't just face them. You won. She shook her head gently. No one wins when a life is lost, Keanu, but maybe now the story will have a little peace. Matt and his team left soon after, promising to keep everything secure. Keanu and Sandra remained in the warehouse. For a while, sitting on the cold floor listening to the storm ease outside. The sound of rain had softened into something calm, like a final heartbeat of the night. I used to think silence was safety, she said quietly. That if I said nothing, the world would forget. But silence only made me smaller. Tonight, I finally spoke. He nodded, watching the dim light filter through the cracks in the roof. And in doing that, you gave her, Liam's wife, the truth she deserved. She turned to him, tears in her eyes. I couldn't have done this without you. Maybe not, he said softly. But you were the one brave enough to walk into the fire. For a long time, they didn't speak. The city was waking up slowly, and dawn light began to touch the horizon. Sandra leaned her head on Keanu's shoulder. Her voice was tired but peaceful. After everything, I just want to go home. Then that's where we'll go, he said quietly. The next morning, headlines filled the news. Former Hollywood agent exposed in decades-long fraud and cover-up. David Russell's name appeared everywhere, along with documents and recordings proving his crimes. The story broke across television, online, and newspapers. Public reaction was fierce. Messages of support flooded Sandra's social media. People who had once doubted her were apologizing, calling her brave. Liam reached out too. He sent a short message that read, "Thank you for telling the truth. She can rest now." Sandra read it in silence, tears falling down her cheeks. Keanu sat beside her, quietly sipping coffee. "You did more than clear your name," he said. "You gave others courage to face their own pasts." She smiled faintly. "I didn't do it alone." Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, they walked together along the empty beach. The air was calm and the ocean reflected the last light of the day. Sandra stopped, looking out over the horizon. "When I first met you," she said softly, "I didn't think anyone could see through me. But you did. You always did." He smiled, turning toward her. "Maybe because I wasn't trying to look through you. I was just looking at you." She laughed quietly, her eyes glistening. "You always make the simplest things sound like peace." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she leaned closer, the same quiet gesture from that night, the one she had never finished. Only this time there was no storm, no fear, no darkness left between them. Her voice was a whisper against the sound of the waves. "Thank you for not giving up on me." He looked into her eyes and replied softly, "You never gave me a reason to." The sun disappeared completely, leaving only the gold trace of twilight over the ocean. They stood there in silence, side by side, two souls who had walked through grief, guilt, and truth, and found something pure on the other side. The night that began in silence had finally spoken, and its words were forgiveness.